Jason, Carmela, thank you for joining us. To get us started, as Ashwini mentioned, our industry has been talking about identity for years and will likely continue to do so. I'd like to ask why you think household-based identity approaches has been getting this renewed attention for agencies as a critical strategy right at this moment.
I think there's a couple of things that are going on right now in the media ecosystem that are causing brands, advertisers, publishers to reassess how they're thinking about identity. The first is fragmentation of media consumption. It's happening across a myriad of different screens and a myriad of different authenticated environments, both in terms of paid TV, streaming, mobile phone consumption. The list goes on. So the fragmentation has caused the audience to look like different people in different households and different environments. The second is privacy. So as privacy laws have evolved, the need to be respectful and more considerate of the audience is really important. And then I think the third thing is signal loss. We've seen a lot of signal loss vis-a-vis the cookie, the IP address, and the rotations there. And with all these three things coming together, I guess this is what it looks like when signals die in general. So, we'll see, and we'll talk about households.
That was a good one. Yeah. It is not 1999, and cross-platform viewership is a real thing. Everyone's not on their televisions, and so targeting specifically across broad age, gender is not the way to reach the audiences today. And so it's all about cross-platform measurement, and identity is key in order to drive the most accurate measurement. So household identity is the most accurate way to basically bring all those signals together. And so household identity is going to also drive not just accurate reach and frequency measurement, but also reduce waste and fraud, so that will help with your pocketbook. As well as drive more efficient ways to capture those audiences and promote really effective attribution as well.
So person-based approaches have been dominating when it comes to digital. When it comes to television, those approaches can fall short. How can a household-based approach help fill in those gaps?
So I actually want to start answering that question through an example. This morning, we all watched a bunch of beautiful ads when we had the Edelman gentleman come up here and show us some of those very, very compelling, creative ad campaigns. We watched it on a big screen, a television screen, and there are 100 of us, so the example's a little blown out. And you know how many emails there probably are in the room? There are probably 1,000 plus emails across this group. So that is true in the CTV world too. When you're watching a streaming service and you're logging in with an email, you're not actually consuming that in most cases as a person. You're consuming that CTV as a household, as a set of people. Now imagine if they tried to target someone in the room with an email. Let's say they used my personal email, J Manningham. You might have seen a Keeps ad up there. Pretty embarrassing, but probably true. They're going to target me based off of that Keeps ad. That's not an effective use of the money, A. And B, you're going to miss a lot of people when you're going to target. And you're ultimately you're being overly precise, which is wasting money. And it's going to be really hard to connect that particular view with an email to a traditional television view, to an offline purchase where I go and I actually sign up and put, I actually have product shipped to my house. So if we think about the media consumption and a lot of the outcomes that you're trying to track as marketers, a lot of those are household level. So being able to understand and reach the right household, track consumption, do the reach frequency planning and connect the outcomes by starting with the household and working to the people, that's going to be a more efficient way to actually participate in the TV and CTV ecosystem.
I wanted to ask about IP addresses, which have been a key tool for household and device targeting. But the factors that you mentioned, dynamic rotation, shared usage and these increasing privacy concerns are impacting their viability. So how should agencies be thinking about this and potentially adapting their strategies?
I can take this one.
Sure.
So, yeah, IP addresses rotate within, so I work for Comcast Advertising within Comcast's own footprint. We know that IP addresses rotate at least once per day. And across all of our subscribers, 32 million, that's quite a lot of rotation in one day. In addition to that, if we think about the connected home and folks that are connecting into their home Wi-Fi in order to watch content or on their smart TV, there's at least 7 different devices that are connected to that home Wi-Fi. And so if you think about IP address rotation, and if you're using IP addresses for targeting, you're not going to be potentially reaching the right audiences with that rotation. So if you're trying to reach those adults with Raspberry Berets that have little red Corvettes, you're probably not going to be very accurate. And so the key to that is really to focus on more accurate identity sources, but also tie those IP addresses to reliable deterministic sources. And so this takes into account both on the targeting side as well as the measurement side. If you're using probabilistic device graphs, we've done studies with our own data and knowing which household an IP address belongs to and comparing that to a deterministic, comparing that with results from a probabilistic device graph. And what we found is that over 25% of the households had their IP address rotating during the course of a campaign. And what that resulted in when you recalculate reach, when those IP addresses were aligned to the correct households, is that reach increased by 32% because those IP addresses rotated to other households. And the implications for attribution are better too, because you can tie the correct household over to the appropriate conversion metric as well.
So measurement and attribution continue to be a key topic, a challenge for the industry. How can incorporating these household strategies help connect those dots, help agencies tie exposure to outcome?
So if we think about outcomes, there's so many different types of outcomes. There's surveys that ultimately will help you assess brand performance. There are purchase outcomes, many of which will come tied to a postal address where you have to ship someone, but it could also be an e-com where you're logging in a user. There's website visits. So it's not to say that if you have a household ID, you're going to solve everything on day one. I think that's true. You need to be, just like you need to be omni-channel, you need to be omni-ID as an advertiser and really think about what are you trying to do. But as it relates to in the TV, CTV ecosystem, and purchases and outcomes, being able to anchor those against a household and then accurately match it to your media consumption data that you're ultimately buying, whether that's in a CTV app, YouTube, streamer, or a traditional television, you need to be able to bring those things together so you can assess, did this actual campaign drive the result that I was looking to do? And I think by looking at that through the lens of a household, that will help you be more precise, more accurate, as opposed to just trying to do it off of a device or going into a black box. So I think it gives you that comfort, comfort and ease of connectivity that allows you to do better measurement with your partners. I don't know, Carmela, if you'd add anything from a advertising perspective that you've observed.
Yeah, I mean, we have Comcast Advertising utilizes basically our subs across close to 70 different DMAs. And so tying the cross-platform impressions to a household is the key to drive accuracy. Some of the areas where Comcast Advertising has really been pushing forward is to innovate in media measurement. And so you've seen maybe some of the announcements around where we've licensed our set-top box data, the return path data, to many of the major measurement providers. And also, in addition to that, we recently released a new product called Signal Authentication, which allows those measurement providers to tie IP addresses to a reliable household identifier, so that they can take into account all of those cross-platform impressions and bring those together to accurately report reach and frequency. And when you can do that across, not just when you can tie IP addresses and identifiers to a household, you can drive more accurate targeting time, and you can better manage and optimize for frequency to improve the user experience, and tying that all the way through to the goals of the campaign, whether that be reach or whether that be attribution. Those are key in order to tie it together.
So as technology continues to innovate and evolve, what are you expecting to see, and what do you think agencies should be considering in the coming years when it relates to household identity and their strategy?
So I think it's important to not try to boil the ocean on day one. Everyone has a different starting point. If you think about some of the big holdcos that exist, they've invested and they've bought massive data assets, data businesses, and they have a different starting point than maybe a more regional-based agency would have. So I don't think the prescription is everyone go and build these massive data businesses on day one. That's not feasible. But I think changing the mindset a little bit toward one oriented around both households and people is step one, and understand what type of media am I looking to measure or target in, and what is the best approach in that type of media. So if you're in a mobile type of media consumption, person level makes a lot of sense. If you're really looking to target in TV or CTV, household makes the most sense. So I think just starting with that logical starting point is an important first step. Then I think you have to be practical in terms of what assets am I looking to build out in what sequence. So you could build a first-party graph. That's going to take some time. You could license a second-party or third-party graph. And I think both of those are very viable options depending on where you're starting from. But then really once you have that mindset shift, think about what you can do with it. Well, you can target, you can be better, more prescriptive with your measurement, you can actually integrate with various clean rooms. I think having control of your own identity gives you a lot more optionality, and it helps you not be locked into a particular platform. So I would say that will open up a lot of optionality as marketers in terms of understanding their audiences that they're trying to reach.
Yeah, I'd just add, as advertisers increase their data assets and their first-party data, creating those environments and collaborative environments to promote the opportunity to tie into reliable data sources is key, and also to create those environments for collaboration so that you can really understand how best to reach those audiences. How do you optimize across all the different endpoints that your campaign is working against, and then really drive the best measurement to reach your campaign goals. And so I think the key is to, as Jason said, really think about where you can reach those consumers, and then working with those advertisers to drive the collaboration necessary, because the interoperability is key. And measurement, advertising is really a team sport, I'd say, but measurement for sure is necessary to connect into a lot of different sources of data, whether that be first-party data and thinking about audiences, or whether that be measurement providers that can bring outcomes to the table, or to more accurate sources of data. So that would be the key for me, is to create those collaborative environments and be able to tap into the best and most reliable data sources.
So a lot of great ideas for implementation there. If you had to sum up and think of a key, maybe top two actionable approaches for how agencies can start incorporating household-based approaches into their strategy, what are your go-to get started points?
Step one, I think, is start with the outcome and the front of your mind. So what are you trying to achieve in the different types of campaigns? So what is the KPI? And then what data do you have that tracks that KPI? So that's step one. Step 2 is what media is ultimately being purchased and what is the best way to think about the consumption of that media environment. So if you're buying CTV or linear TV, household. So what can you do to connect those two pieces of data? Once you've done that, then you ultimately are able to get really good insights that will allow the AI optimization that we've been talking about for the last several sessions. But first, you need to be able to really accurately bring together the outcome with the media consumption. So really focus on those two sides of the coin, and that I think will give you a really good starting point.
Yep. I would just say start with where you're at, right? Look at find an advertiser that's willing to be collaborative, that's willing to be innovative and experiment, and really think about how you can optimize what they already have. And that is driven by a lot of connecting into their data and understanding what they have and understanding really what their goals are as well. And then using that in a way that, one of the things that's top of mind is, for me, is privacy, as I think about data all the time. And so as your clients are going to be really concerned about privacy, and as well as on the sell side as well. And so really optimizing for those privacy concerns, as well as looking holistically across the opportunities to drive media consumption and target the right audiences with the right message. So those are some of the keys I would say, just to build on what Jason said, is also keep privacy in mind and think about, particularly when you're working with clients that are innovative and privacy forward as well.
Just squeeze in one more quick question. Since you talked about privacy or data collaboration is becoming essential for advertisers trying to maximize that first-party data. And how can household identity support those efforts amid a privacy-conscious environment?
So I'll give an example of a smaller advertiser we work with, not a sales pitch, but a smaller advertiser that we work with that you wouldn't think of has a ton of first-party data, that was able to use their data for ROAS measurement. So this is a furniture company in California. Mancini's, were allowed to name them. So Mancini's actually had a lot of sales data, Sleep World, that they wanted to attribute against media spend. And they wanted to obviously protect the privacy of their consumers, their customers. Yet they wanted to be able to, with certainty, determine how much of their media is actually contributing to those sales. And through a self-service clean room environment, which allowed them to load in their data, keep it in their four walls, but then connect it to the media consumption data of Comcast, they were able to calculate a return on ad spend. So that's a very practical, tangible example of a smaller advertiser, not a national advertiser, who is able to run that in a very collaborative, privacy-centric way. And it all was dependent on the household. So it was all dependent on the postal address, shipping address. That was the main key for joining those two data sets. Really powerful analysis that you would traditionally think of only in digital, that was able to be accomplished in linear and CTV world. So pretty cool.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here, and thank you for the Prince references. I really enjoyed this.
Yes, yeah. Sorry for making you all deal with that. Yeah. But we had to go crazy.
All good.
Thank you
so
guys.
much.
Thank you.